Kia ora mara koutou tātou. With me, Tony Wallace. How are you,
Kia ora.
Tony? Yeah, nice to have you here. Okay, so very briefly running back over the series on bribery and corruption, and thank you to Maramaratu for posting these on your, or having these on your site. I posted them there and they've run along. This is something that I've spent a bit of time on. Going back, I was upset at $10 million being given to a Saudi Arabian person for as a facilitation payment. And I went out on the radio and talking about it and so forth. Then I saw, with some gratitude and relief, an article by Lisa Marriott in the Dom Post about the issue, relating it to the Inland Revenue Act of 2007 and the idea of a small facilitation payment, which $10 million is not a small facilitation payment in my book, but for some reason this has been allowed. So that's where things stood until I saw Michael Macaulay's article, which brought us into a wider perspective, I thought, on it, and a very good article again. And he was talking about other legislation, such as the proposed legislation, Organised Crime and Anti-Corruption Legislation Bill going through Parliament. And he also referred readers to UNCAC, which is UNCAC, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. And one of the things about the United Nations Convention Against Corruption is that it characterises corruption as a crime. Mm-hmm. So that's a very important step. If you look at this UN Convention characterising corruption as a crime, and you look at the 2007 Inland Revenue Act, Income Tax Act, with its okaying, so to speak, of facilitation payments, I think we've got a real contradiction here, a real problem. And the whole thing was highlighted for me this morning, actually, with the visit of the Chinese Premier to London and his various critics, given the pomp and display and so forth that's gone with that trip. And the significance of the trip, because there will be billions and billions of dollars spent on things like nuclear reactors and so forth by the Chinese in Britain, and the whole thing will start there that's gone on in Africa and elsewhere with Chinese influence, that we are seeing in China two things. One is the criticism of corruption there, but two is the attempt by Xi and his government to really try and clean up. And an earlier video, Tony, I entitled Tigers, Flies and Kiwis, because the Chinese slogan is that they're after the tigers and the flies, the big shots and the little people involved in corruption, and they have been doing that. They have really gone after these big people, and a lot of very, very high-ranking party officials are now in jail. So that's sort of the broad context. I also mentioned Nigeria, where they're trying to clean up corruption, and I'm suggesting that we can't afford in New Zealand to be in any way, shape, form endorsing this. Now, I just thought I'd bring you in here. Perhaps you'd like to give a broader ethical perspective, perhaps coming from your Catholic worker situation, or any other thoughts you've got.
First thing I'd like to suggest is that the Inland Revenue Act and the Crimes Act are quite different. So if you have a look at your tax return, you'll see a little box where you can declare any illegally gotten gains. Oh, yeah. The government still wants to collect tax even if you've been dope dealing. So there's nothing new in the government allowing illegal actions through the Inland Revenue Act.
Okay.
But given that, as for the broader ethical thing, there's two aspects. First thing we have to look at is ethics, and facilitation payments is bribery, and New Zealand is, in the sense, a corrupt nation that allows corruption, and that's a really sad state of affairs. And I think about the full version of our national anthem, which says, "From corruption, envy and hate, and dissension guard our state, make our country good and great. God defend New Zealand." Unfortunately, we only tend to sing the first verse these days and don't get that far down.
Good on you, Tony, been able to sing the verse of the anthem. I'm not sure all about the Europe. Oh, is that right? Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, good on you, Tony. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to get your opinion on is that I'm quite mystified as to the low level of opposition. I mean, there's me, and I've been rabbiting on, And there's these two who are very good, both of them, Michael Macaulay and Lisa Marriott. But there's very little from, say, even the Greens or from parliamentary people, the Labour Party. There's been quite quiet on it. And in the country, by and large, there seems to be a kind of general acceptance or acquiescence of this. Am I correct?
Well, do you think the forces of international capitalism would be adverse to using such techniques to get what they want? I mean, taking a conspiratorial thought about the way that the world is, how the it's just part of, well, what does a bribe allow? A bribe allows rich people to get better service than poor people. You go to a country full of corruption and you want to get yourself a visa to go to the United States. Yes, I'll get you a visa. Can I have $1,000, please?
All right, Tony. Well, I just thought we'd wrap it up there. And thanks again to people from Mana Manawa 2. We appreciate it. And thank you to all also who've been watching these videos, this series of videos. And I'm going to keep it going because, as I say, I think there's very little opposition to this.